My research broadly relates to the relationship between the economic performance of firms and organizations and other dimensions of performance such as environmental performance and societal performance. In that context, I'd like to talk about two of my research projects. The first research project that I'd like to talk about is the mismatch between the supply and demand for organs for transplantation. For example, in the United States in 2016, there were about 120,000 patients that were waiting to receive an organ and only about 16,000 donors who accounted for about 33,000 organ transplants. And within this context, an alarming statistic or a very startling statistic is that across the donor service areas in the United States, there were about 28% of potential eligible donors from whom organs were never recovered. Through the course of our research, we recognized that there were stages within this process of organ recovery and organ donation which exhibited lack of coordination between hospitals and organ procurement organizations. And our recommendation was a Pareto improving contract whereby not only the hospital and the organ procurement organization, but society as a whole would be better off as a result of the contracts that we recommend. The second research project that I would like to talk about is the effects of public dissemination of information about the hazards of chemical substances. One view is that firms will only respond or will only act if there is environmental legislation in place. However, with increasing public pressure related to the environmental impacts of firms or facilities owned by the firms, we wanted to know, or we wanted to understand whether there's evidence to suggest that firms may be engaging in environmentally proactive behavior. And so what we do is we look at the toxics releases of thousands of facilities in the United States, and we see how that correlates or corresponds with the release of public information about the hazards of chemicals. Specifically, we look at the rankings of chemicals that are released by the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, which reflects the hazards associated with various chemicals. And we see how changes in ranks of these chemicals over time, whether increases or decreases, are related to the environmental actions of facilities related to those chemicals. And we have a really interesting observation in the sense that even if there isn't any legislative instrument that's in place for a particular chemical, the fact that publicly there's been information disseminated about these chemicals increasing in hazard or decreasing in hazard has a bearing on how firms or facilities react with respect to those chemicals. This finding has significant implications because if you look at the legislative process in general, be it chemicals or any other matter, this process tends to be long and drawn out and contentious. And if the Environmental Protection Agency or the EPA in the US or any other similar body across the world wants to have firms think about the hazards of chemical substances, an informational tool, not a legislative tool, could be to release the information about the hazards of chemicals publicly, and there's a good chance that facilities or firms may respond in a manner that's consistent with those hazards.